There are so many different ways and channels to grow your business, but in this guide, I'm going to share my number one audience growth strategy that works every single year, regardless of SEO or Google changes, ad platform tweaks, or the state of the economy. I used it to grow my blog when I first launched it and got tens of thousands of visits overnight as a relative unknown, while also securing over six figures in sales. Better still, this works even if you're a solopreneur or a small business with very little spare time because it's designed for maximum ROI for effort invested. So let's break it down. Why do billion-dollar movie companies get their actors to go on talk shows? They have all this advertising budget and money, so why do they insist on putting Tom Holland on Jimmy Kimmel and other platforms? It's because they know that the fastest way to grow your audience and get attention to an offer is to get in front of someone else's audience that they already have. In one appearance, they can get access to thousands or even millions of people. But better still, it only takes around 30 minutes to do. The audience trusts the host, and now they know, like, and trust the guest, and they're more likely to check out what the guest is selling and buy. Fun fact, this works so well. When Oprah had guests on her show, her recommendations were so powerful that their websites would crash from too many sales. The good news is you don't need to be a celebrity to take advantage of this fact. In fact, like I said, I did it as a complete unknown with a brand new website, nor do you have to go onto TV shows. So let me explain. When I first launched my blog, I was starting from zero in one of the most competitive industries out there, which is content marketing. There's literally billions of blogs on the topic. Now, I'm a nerd, I've done this for a while, and I know how to grow a blog, but I didn't want to wait months for SEO to kick in, and I didn't want to spend money on ads at that time because I was spending the budget on something else. So rather than try and build an audience from scratch, I went straight to audience that already existed, and I pitched podcasts. There's millions of the things, and some of these are bigger than news networks now. So not Oprah, but definitely people bigger than me. I had no public speaking experience, but I'd done countless Zoom calls and customer conversations. So I figured, how different could it be? It's just the same as me chatting with anyone else or chatting to the camera right now. So I sat down and I pitched 80 different podcasts as a complete unknown, and I got booked on 60 of them. So that's a 75% success rate from a cold email. These weren't small shows either. They're like industry leaders. I'm talking podcasts like CoSchedule, Active Campaign, Copy Chief, and more. All podcasts with my exact ideal audience and tens of thousands of downloads per episode. The results? Every time an episode went live, I got waves of highly targeted traffic to my website. And that makes sense because studies show that 73% of podcast listeners take an action after hearing a recommendation just because of that trust factor that they have with the host that I mentioned earlier. So they would listen to the show, visit my site, subscribe, and then some of them became customers almost immediately. What I didn't realize at the time is that the benefits would continue to stack up. You see, some of those episodes would continue to send traffic months after they aired, while other podcasts would hear me on those other shows and then reach out and ask me to be a guest. I even got a job offer from one Fortune 500 company who heard me speak. Even crazier still is the SEO impact. Within 3 months of doing this, my brand new website started to outrank competitors that have been running for like 5 to 10 years, thanks to how powerful the links from these podcasts were. So yeah, you can say that I'm a fan of this channel and this method. However, when I talk about getting on podcasts like this, most people do it wrong, and they can't understand why they don't see the same results. So I'm going to share my process that I like to call the audience avalanche method. So let's break this down. Like I said up top, I like to get the maximum ROI from everything I do if possible, because I'd rather be spending my free time doing other things. With that in mind, the system I've created for this may seem a little complex, but I promise it's simpler than it looks, and it pays off multiple ways. So before I ever send a pitch to a show, I will always build the following assets. First off, the pre-frame content. I'll pick a product or service that I have, and I'll write a piece of content for it. This article should be on a topic that ties into it, but it's also something that my ideal customer would be interested in reading. Maybe it helps solve one of the pain points that the product or service solves. Maybe it helps them understand an aha moment they need to have before they're ready to buy. It just sells them on something that your offer provides. So for example, here's a deep dive guide into how to capture more leads with old content. It's a genuinely good piece of content that helps the audience, so that if someone found this organically outside of the episodes, it would also help them understand and move towards becoming a customer. Equally as important though, I'll make sure that this topic is interesting to a podcast host by making sure it's something like an outstanding result or process or story. Basically something I know that the show's audience would be interested in. So in this example, I talk about the high opt-in rate of the method, and also how a student followed it and got a 1,570% increase in leads in just 90 days, leading into tens of thousands of dollars in sales, all from using the exact same content on a fairly small blog. So again, the topic ties into my offer, but now it's also sexy. It's something the host will want to talk about, which is key to getting it accepted. Next, I'll create something called a hyper-specific offer for that article. This is a lead magnet that's designed to be the next logical thing that the reader wants to take. For example, if my article is a case study that breaks down a step-by-step process of how I helped a student grow to 10,000 visits in 3 months, I would then create the HSO to tie into that. Maybe a video to follow along, some templates, an AI tool, etc. Usually the smaller the better. So here you can see the final version that I went with on the screen. Now, basically, I'll try and get in their head and understand what they're thinking at the time and what they want to do, and then I'll give it to them. I'll see around a 15% opt-in rate from cold traffic like this, using this method, but even higher from podcast listeners. So this then helps me capture the lead from anyone who reads this article, so that I've got a chance to make sales later on. Finally, I'll do something with that lead. I'll create a basic email sequence that's unique, that ties into what they opted in for and my offer to help move them towards being a customer. This converts really well because we're tailoring it to the exact reason they opted in and the thing that they want. So the problem, pain point, and goal are all super aligned. So to recap so far, we have a content asset that's able to get organic traffic on Google, a lead capture technique connected to that that works insanely well, and then an automated sales sequence. Now, all of that sounds good, content marketing wise, but what does it have to do with pitching podcasts, and why does it make it more successful than just pitching people straight away and skipping all this? Well, there's a few things happening when you follow this process. What I love about it is it adds on always additional benefits while also removing a lot of common issues that come with trying to be a guest on a podcast. First of all, it gets us accepted onto shows easier. Most people struggle to pitch shows because the topic doesn't fit or because they're trying to sell something to their audience. But by aligning the pitch with our article topic, it shows that we know what we're talking about, and so the host is more likely to say yes. We will even include a link to the article in the pitch email to show that we know enough about that topic and that we're experts. By doing this and pitching a content topic also, it helps us bypass any costs and get on shows for free. So when you pitch a show, because you've got a product going live, unless you're a huge celebrity, a lot of shows will either want a payment upfront or a percentage of some of the sales that come through. As you can imagine, we don't really want to pay or be bothered to set up affiliate commissions and tracking because it's a pain in the ass. The good news is that by pitching the article topic instead, you're pitching them on something that you know that their audience is interested in and will add massive value to their audience. The host needs topics every week to produce their show. So this helps them not have to come up with an idea, but it knows that you can back up this information and provide what you're talking about. Often that means you can skip the payment entirely. I've been on multiple shows for free that charge every single guest that they have on. They've accepted because the topic is something they really want to hear about, Another benefit by doing this is it causes the article to rank. So when you reference the article inside of the podcast episode, you'll get a backlink from the show in the show notes referring to it. However, because instead of going to a homepage and doing nothing, or a squeeze page which will bounce, it's going to your article, which will now rank higher in Google, meaning it's free traffic. Search engines. Links like these are insanely powerful. I've got DA85, DA90 backlinks from these podcast shows. They're so powerful. If you were to try and buy them, and they wouldn't even let you, but they would cost thousands of dollars on their own. It's not just traditional SEO that benefits from being linked to your article either. It also shows you up more in AI search. So by being a guest on all these shows and talking about the same topic again and again and again, it impacts your AI search. Simply because these AI tools like to recommend sites and people with brand authority. So when you show up again and again and again talking about the same topic but tweaked slightly for different audiences, you'll start getting recommended for this topic on AI search tools. Another benefit by actually pitching an article topic is it drives more listener traffic. So during the episode, you're talking about the topic with the host, but you're probably not going in as much detail as your article does. So it's really easy to hint at those things covered in your guide and say, I cover it far more in the article. That's going to get people to click across and check it out. That means much more traffic coming to your website for every episode you did. However, if all we ever did was pitch a lead magnet, even if the episode was great and you were on fire, far less of the listeners will want to click across because they don't see the immediate value or want to be pitched or opt in and given an email. Even if the lead magnet is something that they really want, it's just not an exciting thing to stop the episode and click across to. It's easy to become a task that they want to do later, but then they forget and never come back. But if you're listening to the show and you want to learn more and you keep mentioning how your article covers this and this and this, they're going to open that at the same time as they're listening and they'll click across like crazy. And the good news is that because of the HSO method that we're using, they're much more likely to then opt in. The industry standard opt-in rate for lead magnets and things is about 2%. But when you use an HSO like this, I said with a cold audience, it converts around 15%, which is huge. However, I've seen podcast traffic come across and convert at around 40% because they're already super warm leads after listening. This means you can now convert far more of that lost traffic into potential sales and then sell them via automation over time. Finally, this becomes an evergreen asset. So although podcast appearances can drive a lot of traffic on launch and then for a few weeks later, that traffic will eventually die off. However, because you were smart to build links to the article instead, it'll now start to rank and get traffic for years to come, all while capturing leads and converting to sales. Fun fact, I've got an article that I promoted when I first ever did this that is about 9 years ago, and it still gets traffic and leads to this day from this method. You gotta love it when you can do something once and it continues to pay off again and again. So it's time to try this audience growth strategy for yourself. Like I said up top, this audience avalanche method is a little more effort up front, but it increases the success rate of being accepted, while also increases the traffic that comes across as well as the leads and sales. You can then pitch as many relevant shows as you want, and each time they go live, expect to see a burst of sales not long after. I actually like to do batches of them where I pitch maybe 50 shows, go on 30 or so over the next month. It's a great way to get a lot more leads and sales, and I can batch it out going on different shows and then doing other tasks. It's honestly one of the best audience growth strategies I've ever used, and it can work for businesses of any size, but it's really great for solopreneurs and SMBs because a lot of this stuff you're doing once. You make the evergreen asset, you record a show, and then you see thousands of visits and sales. So if you're stuck for time, you can see huge results all on your own again and again and again without needing a whole marketing team or budget to do it. If you want to start pitching podcasts, then give it a try now via the link in the description below.